to keep doing it, and so that's not going to work. And furthermore, it's taking power away from her, because as the rabbi said, she could pick up the phone and call the police. And so you need to make her feel empowered to somehow deal with the situation as well.
Yeah. Also, what I have to say is
I'm just safety. I'm just referring to what Shani said. I mean, if I want to maybe.
Legally cannot take the husband away.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hearing that he's a rageaholic, right? That his kind of drinking leads to explosions. If there's drinking here, and he's that kind of alcoholic. He doesn't just drink himself into a messy stupor. A visit by the police, when they've both been doing this dance of he abuses, she forgives, it may just exacerbate things. So you might want to encourage her to see that she's in danger and that she needs a safety plan with an advocate, a violence advocate. Yes.
I understand what the implications are based on what we're doing here in this session, what we've been covering all day. But I'm curious what your thoughts are and what your experience would say in situations that aren't, immediately tied to a substance abuse and what we're talking about all today. As rabbis, as leaders in those pastoral positions, is there a general rule, for lack of a better word, where the positions that we're going to find ourselves in, should we be assuming the worst? Should we be assuming not the worst? What would, because there's no way of knowing, right? Based on the experiences we have, we could come to our own assumptions or implications of what's going on, but unless, we were in the room with the boy when he OD'd, or we're here in their home watching this is whatever get battered, right? We don't know. We can make the assumption, but what should we assume? Should we assume? Should we assume the worst? Should we assume not the worst?
We should have really trusted, quick access to the experts who can work with us. So you don't wait till something like this happens to find those experts. You have handy 3 people that you can reach. If you can't reach the first 2, you reach the third, and to sort things out and to figure out what to do. Hopefully they will speak to the individual right there, on the phone, and do their profession, which they know how to do, which what the rabbi isn't trained to do, and be a team member. But I think precisely because you're in this not knowing, you need to have somebody who knows what to do when you don't know, and without, hopefully, generally speaking, they will not make things worse. They will help the person get, to a safe place, which might be home, but might not be. Yes?
So something that I thought of with what David said is it maybe calling the police wasn't the right thing in this situation, but what if, and I'm wondering if this might be where David is coming from his own, what I know about what he did before this. What if it's a child? What if it's someone if it's the wife saying he's beating my children? What if it's a child coming to you saying my dad's beating my mom and I don't feel safe? And I guess what I'm getting at underlying is at what point do we have some responsibility to say there's a vulnerable person who's not safe here and I can't just deal with this confidentially. I'm required to take some action. And I what I was maybe being cryptic about is compared to say someone working in a school or a public school teacher, which I hope I'm not. That's not a secret. I'm revealing, which I know David was before.
A mandated reporter.
Yeah. When are we a clergy mandated reporter, if not legally, at least ethically?
Yeah. So we used the phrase pikuach nefesh earlier. If we have the sense that there's very possibly an imminent danger here, and then I think we have an obligation to try and get help. And if you say to someone, I think there's really a danger here. We need to get help. Then their response may be, I'm leaving, or it may be, okay, I'll wait for the help. But your response is to get help. And you won't be taken to court because you tried to help someone's life when they gave you information that led you to believe they were in danger. Yes.
Yeah, include the maybe reported for absolutely children.
Yeah.
You could just, in the next minute and a half, you just want the entire day and tell everybody what they need to know about this issue that's still remaining. That would be
Because we're about to end? Not 3:30. Okay. No, I just...
Did we, I can't remember what we said. How is people's energy level? Good? You can go a little bit longer?
I'm going to switch subject in a second to something else.
Okay.
Frank.
I just want to say one more time that even when you are calling for help in these situations, you don't need to call the police. You very rarely need to call the police unless you see somebody in imminent physical danger that you can't stop. You don't need to bring somebody with a gun into these situations. They don't always keep people safe. They often don't keep people safe. You can call Child Protective Services. In fact, if you're a mandated reporter, that's who you should call. I want to put one more word in for being really, really careful about when you are bringing police into somebody's life.
Yeah. I do want to thank the police in my own individual case with another child for their very helpful intervention. Okay. Thank you. Let me just, you can bring it up no matter what else we discuss next. You can ask your question. On page 10 and 11 is something we used. I'll just tell you what it is quickly. Colleagues in recovery were beginning a Jack's Day of Service on September 11th. They were providing free clothing to men and women who were in recovery and who were seeking employment, newly in recovery and were seeking employment. So they got all this clothing donated, and they were serving as shoppers with the clients who came from certain shelters and other places to get outfits to wear for their interviews. So it was September 11th, it was during Elul, so we did Psalm 27 with recovery responses. So I'm not going to do the whole thing, I'll do the beginning. Hashem is my light and my help, whom will I fear? Hashem is the strength of my life, who can make me afraid? If God seems far away, who moved? When evil people draw near to devour my flesh, it is these foes and enemies who stumble and fall. Stick with the winners. These are all lines from the recovery world, so we matched them up to lines from Psalm 27. It was a lot of fun, actually, and a good beginning to the day. So look at the last verse 14. Hope in Hashem, be strong inside and let your heart be brave. Yes, hope in Hashem. Keep coming back. Okay. We don't have time for the 7 situations on page 12, but that's good to leave you for more workshoppy things to do with Carol or other people here. And I want to tell you what's on page 13 and 14, because maybe you'll use it where you're student interning next week, the week of Vayikra. This is a collection of teachings, really an example of incorporating recovery in the shul. It's all about the small aleph in the word Vayikra, and it's at the top, it's not at the bottom. Like, I didn't know how to get that little aleph up to the top part of the resh. But these are different readings which I encourage you to look at another time about the small aleph and humility. But let's go to guilt and shame, because that's really important for us to talk about. I went through social work school, and first rabbinical school and then social work school, without being taught about shame. And shame is so important that when I realized it was so important in 2008 when the economy collapsed, and I was running a group called, I can't remember the name of the group, but it was a group for unemployed Jews seeking employment, that's what we called it, but there was a Hebrew name to it. It went on for years, And I realized the story in the room was shame. That's what was being felt in the Jewish community. I have another list of 18 groups in the Jewish community that are stigmatized. And one of them are those who are unemployed or underemployed. And this is truly a neglected area. And why is shame neglected? Because nobody wants to feel it. Nobody wants to talk about it. Everyone in this room, including yours truly, maybe especially yours truly, has felt shame. And it's really hard to talk about. But it's really critical in relation not just to alcoholics and those who are addicted, but to their loved ones and to many in Amcha, like I just said. So in the recovery world, it's been really important. And there's a book called Guilt and Shame, a short book by Ernest Kurtz, who's from the world of recovery. And he has this great chart comparing guilt to shame. And guilt, to railroad through this, guilt is about something that I did or said wrong that I need to fix. And as we know from our tradition of Teshuvah, there's a path. Even when you have to atone for something you did to someone who has died in the interim, there's a path. But shame is, you'll see it on the bottom, number 3 on the bottom of 15. The feeling that one is inadequate, no good, unworthy. A global statement of the self, by the self, in relation to the self. So the self is telling the self that the self is not worthy. That's a good definition of shame. And so how do you intervene with that? I mean, it's really like, I actually have 18 strategies for how to intervene, because I have a whole other workshop on shame. But one way is lasagna therapy, right? You invite the person over for a Shabbos dinner, and really that's not a small thing, because when people are feeling ashamed, they need to be re-invited and kind of restored to the community. But on the back, you'll see on page 16. And this is really what I want just to cram in, that people have to own shame. If you look in the second section on owning shame and substituting for shame, the critical feature of all forms of dealing with acknowledged shame is that the sufferer must first own it before giving it away. So I have a list of things that you might be ashamed of or have felt shame about. It's a long list. Many people would much rather express anger than express shame. Or even many people would much rather express depression than express shame. So very often it morphs into anger or depression. Now, having said all that, and you can read through this stuff on your own, shame is really important in our tradition. And at the bottom of page 16, I give you some quotes to that effect. It's not good to be shameful, but it's not good to be shameless. And our tradition sees a positive value in shame, but of course, not in being shamed by somebody, humiliated by somebody. But you can see that many mitzvot are fulfilled only out of shame. Or Ibn Gabirol said, the chief of all the 10 virtues is a sense of shame. He himself felt a great deal of shame. He was disfigured, and he was orphaned at a young age, and impoverished. And even though he was this incredible poet and philosopher, he felt a lot of shame in his life. And look at that one. The world was created for the sake of those who are ashamed to do evil. Shame is an iron fence against sin. Okay, all that's about that. But I did want you to be aware that sometimes shame is a very big issue, and that one reason why people feel restored in 12-step fellowship groups, or just in a fellowship group, in any kind of mutual support group, is that they don't feel like aliens on the planet, and they don't feel shame. I have 3 bereaved parent groups: bereaved parents who lost adult children, bereaved parents who lost young adult children, and bereaved parents who lost young children. And they feel like aliens on the planet because people don't lose children. The myth is that people don't lose children. And so they're avoided by a lot of people, and they came up with 10 commandments for the community on how to do. I can email this up. And also 27 forbidden lines. It started with 13 and it's up to 27 now. Forbidden lines to say to bereaved parents. And one of the things they really feel is, strangely enough, they feel shame because they didn't protect their child. They feel guilt, of course, but they also feel like it's kind of a secondary level that why is everyone avoiding me? Why? They not only feel the guilt, but they feel shame also.
Something,
Yeah.
At the risk of saying something heretical, you can all stone me later. I'm just thinking this through. You can stone me later. I'm just thinking about how we have one of our dearest friends, his child is an addict. And we've often said, like, it seems like this addict feels no shame. Don't they know they're doing it? Don't they know they're doing it? I mean, Rebecca earlier, you weren't here, so Rebecca was talking about her brother, and that he would basically do anything for drugs, over like stuff that should make him shame, but he doesn't. His disease is such that he is impelled to doing these things and doesn't feel that sense of shame. I'm almost like shame, maybe you just said this, but like somehow addiction seems to just like trump shame until people stop using, and then that one of the steps is to go say sorry for what you're doing. So there's something about the lack of too much shame. Sorry, that's not what's that. Addiction crushes shame so that there's no shame, and that's a problem. No shame is a problem. Too much shame is obviously a problem. We know that. We know that. But like no shame is also its own problem, and then it comes crashing down when the person wants to start recovering.
Yeah, there's a saying in the movement, I can't remember the exact words, but you need to replace your guilt with shame. It's like that instead of going around feeling guilty towards your spouse, you should start feeling some shame as a positive motivator. I forget how they say it, but it's more eloquent than I just said. You wanted to say something before. Could you fit it in there? Oh, that's okay.
So I was struck by your earlier example, I guess, from last week for running that was rejected. That because it was the husband who was saying potentially being violent, it kind of changed the way we viewed it. Because oftentimes we have children, teenage children, who are addicts, who can be violent. And I think our response, our instinct was so different. And we allowed kind of power dynamics that we sort of assumed between husband and wife to kind of feel trapped about what could have been more sensitive, nuanced response, and potentially less jumping to kind of worst case scenario. I certainly have friends who have kids who have, been violent enough. And obviously I want to make sure they're physically safe, but primarily the conversation is about how to help a child. And it was interesting how ours morphed as we wanted.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, the current issue of Lilith magazine has an article on estranged Jewish families, and that's part of it. The violent young adult, and we didn't talk about a lot of things. Elder abuse is another thing that is happening a lot in the community. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. Okay, so since we're nearing the last moments, the only other thing I photocopied for you, and I'm going to send Rabbi Judson some things that I put in here that I thought I would pull out, that instead I'll send you and you can decide what you want to circulate. But on a Jack Spiritual Day, we had a workshop on anger, and they came up with this list of things that are targeted for anger on page 17. So I just want to know where that came from. It's in no order, but things that make. We didn't cover the Serenity Prayer, so I'll end with it in Hebrew, just because it's right, I think, for today. Eli, תן לי שלווה לקבל הדברים שאינם ביכולתי לשנותם. את האומץ לשנות את הדברים אשר ביכולתי, ואת התבונה להבחין בין השניים. Okay, so that's the Serenity Prayer. And I wish everybody real strength and support in all your work. And it was really good to be here. I'm sorry I have to run back to the Big Apple. And invite me back, because I have a few other workshops I'd like to do.
Thank
you.
Thank you all so much. Thank you
Thank you.
for stepping. Once again, really thank you to Molly and Sharon across the office for CJP support and giving us understanding. Until 2:30. Still lots to discuss, lots of questions on member course. And everybody should be well. Have a more pleasant evening than the day.